August 2025, a suburb of Tampa, Florida. The house on Palm Ridge Drive looked like dozens of others in the neighborhood. Outwardly, the Torres family was no different from their neighbors, but inside their home, silence had long since settled in. Lance Torres woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m. At 38, he was the owner of a small construction company, Torres Construction, which he had founded 10 years earlier after leaving a large firm. A muscular man of medium height with harsh features, he was accustomed to controlling every aspect of his business. This same need for control extended to his family life. Tara, his wife, worked as a saleswoman at Bella Vista, a women's clothing store in the Westfield shopping center. At 35, she had retained her slim figure and soft features, but her eyes had long since lost their lively sparkle. Over the past 2 years, she had seemed to fade into her own shadow, becoming increasingly withdrawn and distant. On the morning of August 15th, Lance watched Tara prepare breakfast in the kitchen. She silently flipped the eggs, avoiding his gaze. They used to talk in the mornings, plan their day, share news. Now there was an invisible wall between them. "I'll be late at work today," she said, without looking up from the frying pan. "We're doing inventory." Lance put down the morning paper. Over the past month, Tara had been working late at least 3 times a week. Did a clothing store require that much overtime? He said nothing, but he remembered every word. Lance couldn't concentrate at work. His crew was finishing renovations on a private home in the prestigious Hyde Park neighborhood, but his thoughts kept returning to his wife. Jay Rodriguez, his foreman and old friend, noticed his boss's distraction. "Everything okay, Lance? You seem out of it." "Family stuff," Lance replied curtly, hammering a nail with excessive force. Jay nodded understandingly. He had known the Torres family for many years and had seen how their relationship had changed. Tara used to visit the construction site often, bringing lunch and taking an interest in the work. The last time she had been seen at the site was 6 months ago. Lance returned home at 7:30 p.m. Tara's car was not in the driveway. He checked the time on his phone. The store closed at 9 p.m., but inventory could take longer. He reheated the leftovers from last night's dinner and turned on the TV, but he couldn't concentrate on the program. Tara showed up at 10:45. Her hair was slightly tousled, and her face showed signs of fatigue that Lance thought seemed feigned. "How's it going?" he asked, studying her expression. "Fine. Long day." She walked past him, heading for the bathroom. "I'm going to take a shower and go to bed." "Tara." She stopped at the foot of the stairs. "We hardly talk. Maybe we could go out to dinner tomorrow night?" She paused a second longer than she should have. "I can't tomorrow. We have a meeting with suppliers." Lance felt something tighten inside him. "Saturday? They're only coming from Miami for the weekend." Tara's voice was even, but she still wasn't looking at him. That night, Lance lay in bed, listening to his wife's breathing. Tara fell asleep quickly, or pretended to. He remembered the early years of their marriage, when they could talk until dawn, make plans, dream. Back then, Tara was different, open, laughing, lively. The changes began gradually, about a year ago. First, Tara started staying late at work more often. Then she developed new interests. She signed up for yoga classes, started reading self-help books, and began paying more attention to her appearance. At first, Lance was happy about the changes, but gradually he realized that his wife wasn't becoming a better person. She was becoming someone else. And then there were the little things. A new habit of putting her phone away when he entered the room. Changing the password on the home computer. Anxiety when the home phone rang. All of this might have seemed like paranoia, but Lance is no fool. In the construction business, he learned to notice details, read people, and see what others miss. The next morning, August 16th, Tara left for work as usual. Lance waited half an hour, then drove to the mall. He parked so he could see the entrance to Bella Vista and watched. At 12:30, Tara came out for her lunch break. She walked quickly, looking back frequently, and headed not for the food court, but for the exit of the mall. Lance followed her at a distance. Tara got into her Honda Civic and drove not to where she usually had lunch. Instead, she turned onto Interstate 275 toward downtown. 20 minutes later, Lance lost sight of her in heavy traffic. When he asked her how her day had gone that evening, Tara replied, "Normal. Nothing special." A lie. Lance was sure of it. Over the next few days, he began to watch his wife more closely. She did leave for work every morning and return in the evening, but her return time varied. Sometimes she was home by 7, sometimes closer to 11. She had reasonable explanations for all her delays: inventory, training new employees, meetings with brand representatives. But the little things kept adding up. New cosmetics in the bathroom, perfume he had never bought, lingerie that Tara wore only for herself. When Lance tried to make love to her, she pulled away, claiming she was tired. On Sunday, August 21st, Lance decided to have a talk with her. They sat in the backyard, sipping their morning coffee. The Florida sun was already beating down, promising a hot day. "Tara, I feel like we're growing apart." She looked at him over her cup. "What do you mean?" "You've changed. We don't talk anymore. We don't spend time together. You're always at work or thinking about work." "I'm trying to advance my career. I thought you would support me." "I do, but I feel like you're hiding something." Tara froze with the cup at her lips. For a moment, something like panic flashed in her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. "Lance, you're being paranoid. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to be more independent." "Independent from me?" "Independent in general. For a long time, I lived only for your interests, your plans. It's time to think about myself." It was their first open conflict in months. Lance felt anger rising inside him, a familiar feeling that he had difficulty controlling. "My interests? I provide for this family, working 12 hours a day so that we have everything we need. And you're talking about independence?" Tara put her cup on the table and stood up. "I don't want to argue. I have things to do." "On Sunday? What things?" But she was already walking into the house. Half an hour later, Tara got in her car and drove away, saying she was meeting a friend from yoga. Lance remained sitting in the yard, feeling his world crumble. In 13 years of marriage, they had had their disagreements, but never such cold alienation. Something was happening to his wife, and he intended to find out what it was. August 26, 2025. Lance sat in his Ford F-150 pickup truck near the Best Buy electronics store in the Brandon shopping center. For the past few days, he had been thinking about how to find out the truth about his wife's behavior without causing a scene or making accusations. The solution came unexpectedly when he heard a radio advertisement for GPS trackers for cars. Inside the store, a salesperson, a young man with a rehearsed smile, was showing various models of tracking devices. "This tracker is the best choice for monitoring your family car," he explained, demonstrating a compact black device the size of a matchbox. The battery lasts up to 2 weeks, with an accuracy of up to 3 meters, and real-time tracking via a phone app. Lance paid cash for the $180 tracker. On the way home, he stopped at an empty parking lot and studied the instructions. The device was easy to use. All he had to do was download the app and activate the SIM card. At home, he waited for Tara to take a shower and quietly slipped into the garage. Her purse was on the kitchen table, a brown leather coach bag she had been carrying for 2 years. Lance carefully opened the inside pocket and hid the tracker under the lining. The device was so thin that it was almost impossible to detect by accident. The next morning, Lance watched the red dot on his phone screen as Tara drove to work. The dot moved along a familiar route, Palm Ridge Drive, then the highway to Westfield Mall. At 9:15, the dot stopped near Bella Vista. Everything looked normal. But at 12:45 p.m., during her lunch break, the red dot started moving again. This time, it didn't head for the food court, but left the mall and drove down I-275 toward downtown Tampa. Lance traced the route on the map. Tara was heading to the Westchase area, about 15 minutes from her work. The dot stopped near the Premium Motors car dealership. Lance frowned. Why would Tara need a car dealership? Their Honda was in excellent condition, and they weren't planning on buying a new car. An hour later, the dot returned to Bella Vista. That evening, Lance asked his wife about her day. "Same as usual," Tara replied, without looking up from her dinner. "Lots of customers. New collection arrived." No mention of the car dealership. Over the next few days, Lance monitored his wife's movements through the app. Most of the time, she was indeed at work or at home, but 2 or 3 times a week, the red dot deviated from her usual route. Tara visited a cafe in the city center, a shopping mall in another neighborhood, and several times, the same Premium Motors car dealership. On September 1st, Lance decided to check out the car dealership himself. He arrived there posing as a potential buyer of a truck for his construction company. The saleswoman, an attractive woman in her 30s with short dark hair and confident manners, introduced herself as Rachel King. "Welcome to Premium Motors. What are you interested in?" Lance pretended to be looking at pickup trucks, but in reality, he was watching Rachel. She was open, friendly, professional. On her desk was a photo of her with another woman. They were hugging in front of a beach, looking happy and relaxed. "Nice photo," Lance remarked, nodding at the picture. "Thanks. That's my friend Jessica. We were in Key West last weekend." Girlfriend. Lance noted the way Rachel said the word, with a warmth and tenderness that suggested a deeper relationship. After half an hour of feigned interest in trucks, Lance left with Rachel's business card and a vague sense of unease. What connected his wife to this woman? On September 3rd, the answer began to become clear. The red dot on the phone screen showed that Tara had gone to Premium Motors again during her lunch break. But this time she spent almost 2 hours there, returning to work only at 3 p.m. In the evening, Lance tried to find out the details. "You had a long lunch today." Tara didn't answer right away, continuing to wash the dishes. "I went shopping. I was looking for a gift for my sister. It's her birthday next week." "Where did you look?" "In different places. There are several good boutiques downtown." Another lie. Lance knew that Tara's sister lived in California and that her birthday was in March, not September. The next day, he followed the red dot more closely. Tara did indeed arrive at the car dealership, but the dot did not stop near the building. Instead, it moved to the Starbucks parking lot across the street, where it stayed for an hour and a half. Lance realized his wife was meeting someone, most likely Rachel from the car dealership. On September 6th, what he feared happened. The red dot left the usual area and headed down I-4 toward Lakeland. It stopped near the Sunset Inn, a small roadside motel that Lance knew by reputation. It was a place for short encounters, not a place where tourists or business travelers would stay. Tara spent 3 hours at the motel. When she returned home that evening, Lance studied her face, looking for signs of guilt or anxiety. But Tara looked calm, even a little happy. There was a lightness in her movements that he hadn't seen in months. "Good day?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled sincerely at him. "A very good day." Lance felt a cold rage growing inside him. His wife had cheated on him, and she was happy about it. 13 years of marriage, the home they had built together, their plans for the future, none of it meant anything to her. Over the next few days, Lance continued to track Tara's movements. The pattern became clear. 2 or 3 times a week, she would meet someone at a cafe or restaurant, and then they would go to the Sunset Inn motel. Each time, she would return home in high spirits, which caused Lance additional pain. He began to lose sleep, appetite, and concentration at work. Jay noticed several times that his boss was making mistakes that could cost the company money or reputation. "Lance, what's going on with you? You haven't been yourself for 2 weeks." "Everything's fine. Lance replied. But that was far from the truth. On the evening of September 10th, he sat in his home office, staring at his phone screen. The red dot was back at the motel. Tara said she was staying late at work because of inventory, but the GPS showed a completely different picture. September 14th, 2025, Thursday. Lance sat in his pickup truck in the parking lot of Home Depot, watching the red dot on his phone screen. At 2:20 p.m., Tara left Bella Vista and drove along the familiar route to Premium Motors. Lance started the engine. He followed at a distance, staying a few cars behind his wife's white Honda Civic. His heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed to drown out the sound of the engine. In 3 weeks of surveillance, this was the first time he had decided to physically follow Tara. Tara parked near the car dealership and got out of the car. Lance stopped across the street, behind a row of bushes, where he could watch without giving himself away. A few minutes later, a familiar figure emerged from the building, Rachel King. The women met at the entrance, and what Lance saw made him grip the steering wheel tighter. Rachel hugged Tara. It wasn't a friendly hug or a formal greeting. It was a warm, tender embrace between people who were intimately close. Their lips met in a brief but clearly romantic kiss. Lance felt the world around him shrink to the size of the car interior. The betrayal was painful enough, but this was more than just betrayal. It called into question everything he thought about his wife, their marriage, and himself. The women got into Rachel's car, a red Mazda CX-5, and drove toward the motel. Lance followed them, keeping his distance but not losing sight of them. 20 minutes on I-4, an exit onto Polk City Road, and there was the familiar Sunset Inn, a one-story building with a faded sign and a parking lot that had seen better days. Rachel stopped near the motel office. Lance parked around the corner of the building, where he could watch but remain unseen. Rachel went into the office and returned a few minutes later with a key. They headed for room 15. Lance sat in the car for an hour and a half, fighting the urge to burst into the room and cause a scene. But stronger was the need to understand the extent of the betrayal. How long had this been going on? How serious was their relationship? Was Tara planning to leave him? At 5:45 p.m., the door to the room opened. The women came out looking relaxed and happy. Tara was wearing the same clothes, but her hair was slightly tousled and her lipstick was smudged. They said goodbye for a long time by the cars, kissing and hugging again. Lance followed his wife's Honda to the mall, where she parked near Bella Vista. Tara went into the store, probably to create an alibi for her absence. Half an hour later, she left and drove home. Lance arrived home first. He was sitting in the living room when he heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Tara entered the house at 7:20 p.m., carrying a small bag from the store. "Hi," she said, as if nothing had happened. "Sorry I'm late. I had a meeting with a representative of a new brand." Lance looked at her, unable to believe how easily the lies rolled off her tongue. "How did the meeting go?" "Good. Very promising line." Tara walked into the kitchen, avoiding his gaze. "What's for dinner?" "Tara." Lance's voice was quieter than usual, but there was steel in it. "Come here." She froze by the refrigerator. Something in his tone made her turn and slowly return to the living room. "Sit down." Tara sat on the edge of the sofa, keeping her distance. Her hands were shaking slightly. "I know," Lance said. "What do you know?" "About the motel, about Rachel King, about what you're really doing when you say you're staying late at work." Tara's face paled. She opened her mouth but made no sound. "Do you want to tell me the truth, or are you going to keep lying?" Tara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her gaze was a mixture of fear and determination. "Lance, it's hard to explain." "Try." "I didn't plan for this to happen. Rachel came to the store to buy clothes for her friend. We started talking, and we have a lot in common. At first, we were just friends. And then?" Tara paused, searching for the right words. "Then I realized I felt something for her that I had never felt before. even for you." The words hit Lance like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means that I've spent my whole life trying to be someone I'm not. I thought that if I got married, started a family, and lived like everyone else, this feeling would go away. But it didn't go away, Lance. It only got stronger. The silence in the room was deafening. Lance felt everything he believed in crumbling. Not just their marriage, his entire worldview was turned upside down. 13 years, he said hoarsely. "You lied to me for 13 years. I didn't lie. I tried to love you the way you deserve to be loved, but I can't change who I am." Lance stood up and began pacing the room. Anger rose in him in waves, each stronger than the last. So what? Our marriage meant nothing? All these years were a sham? No! Tara stood up too. "I cared for you. I respected you. But that's not the kind of love you need for a real marriage." "What about Rachel? Is that the kind of love?" Tara didn't answer, but the look on her face said it all. "Are you planning to leave?" Lance asked, stopping in front of her. "I don't know. I need time to figure things out." "Time?" Lance's voice grew louder. "How much more time do you need to decide if our marriage is worth anything?" "Lance, please don't yell at me." "Am I yelling?" He took a step closer, and Tara instinctively backed away. "You're destroying our family for the sake of this perversion, and I'm not supposed to yell?" "It's not a perversion." For the first time in a long time, Tara's voice was steely. "It's who I am." "No!" Lance grabbed her by the shoulders. "You're my wife. You belong to me, not some lesbian from the car dealership." "Let me go." Tara tried to break free, but his grip was too strong. "You're not leaving me. Do you understand? We'll fix this. We'll go to a psychologist, a doctor, anyone, but you're not going to destroy our marriage because of a temporary lapse in judgment." "Lance, you're hurting me." He let go of her so abruptly that she almost fell. His fingers left red marks on her shoulders. "Tomorrow you're going to call this Rachel and tell her it's over. Is that clear?" Tara rubbed her shoulders, looking at him with a mixture of fear and hatred. "No." "What?" "I said no. I'm not going to do it." Lance felt the last remnants of self-control leave him. "Then I'll do it myself." September 17th, 2025, 9:47 p.m., Sunset Inn Motel. Ana Garcia was finishing her shift at the motel office when she heard screams coming from room 15. At 52, she had seen it all: family quarrels, drunken brawls, drug dens. But these screams were different. They were filled with despair and terror. She looked out the window. 2 cars were parked near room 15, a red Mazda and a white Honda, which she had seen there several times in recent weeks. Usually these visitors were quiet, but today something had gone wrong. The screams stopped as suddenly as they had started. Anna waited a few minutes, then went back to her business, deciding that the quarrel had settled itself. At 10:15 p.m., a man came out of room 15. Anna saw his silhouette in the dim light of the parking lot lights, tall, heavily built, dressed in dark clothes. He quickly walked to a Ford pickup truck parked in the shade at the far end of the parking lot. Anna didn't think much of it. Motel guests often preferred to park away from the main entrance. The pickup truck drove away, but 2 other cars remained. At 10:45 p.m., Anna decided to check the room. In her 40 years in the hotel business, she had learned to trust her intuition, and something about this situation bothered her. She knocked on the door of room 15. No one answered. "Is everything okay?" she called out. Silence. Anna used her master key to open the door. What she saw made her scream. At 11:03 p.m., Officer Mike Rogers' first patrol car arrived on the scene. Ana Garcia sat in the motel office, shaking from shock and sipping water. "There are 2 women in there," she repeated. "I thought they were just arguing, but—" Rogers called for backup and cordoned off the crime scene. In room 15, 2 bodies lay on the floor. A woman in her mid-30s with long brown hair was near the bed. Next to her was another woman, younger, with short dark hair. Both were dead. There were few signs of a struggle, but the blood on the walls and floor indicated that force had been used. Documents lay on the bedside table. Driver's licenses showed that the victims were named Tara Torres and Rachel King. At 11:47 p.m., Detective Jim Collins of the Polk County Police Homicide Division arrived on the scene. At 45, he had investigated over 100 murder cases, but each new crime still aroused in him a mixture of professional interest and human sorrow. Collins was a short man with graying hair and tired eyes. He had 2 years left before retirement and planned to end his career with no unsolved cases. "What do we have?" he asked Officer Rogers. "A double homicide." The women checked into the room around 7 p.m. The motel owner heard screams around 10, but decided not to intervene. She found the bodies at 10:30. Collins entered the room, carefully examining the scene. Both victims were lying in different parts of the small room. Tara Torres was by the bed, wearing jeans and a blouse. Rachel King was near the bathroom door, wearing a business suit. "Looks like they were caught off guard," the detective muttered. "Doesn't look like a robbery. Wallets are here, jewelry too." He noticed a purse on the bed, a brown leather coach bag. Next to it lay a cell phone with a cracked screen. "Call the crime scene investigators," Collins said, "and find anyone who might have seen or heard anything." An hour later, a team of forensic experts led by technician Sarah Mitchell arrived on the scene. While they photographed and collected evidence, Collins questioned Anna Garcia. "Tell me about these women. Did they come here often?" Anna nodded. "For the last 3 weeks, every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. They always rented the same room. Quiet, polite, paid cash." "Did they come together?" "Usually, yes. In a red car, a Mazda. But today was different." "How was it different?" "At first, only one arrived, the one with long hair. 10 minutes later, the second one arrived. And then, maybe half an hour later, a man in a pickup truck showed up." Collins perked up. "Describe the man." "Tall, strong, dark hair, angry look." Anna paused. "He'd burst right into the room, didn't even knock. He must have known they were there." "Did you see the pickup truck's license plate number?" "No, I'm sorry. It was dark, and I didn't think of it." Collins wrote down her statement and asked Anna to recall any other details. Then he returned to examining the crime scene. Sarah Mitchell approached him with some evidence. "Detective, we have something interesting." She showed him a plastic bag with evidence. Inside was a small black device the size of a matchbox. "A GPS tracker. We found it in the purse of one of the victims, Tara Torres. Someone was tracking her movements." Collins examined the device. Her husband, most likely. He suspected her of cheating. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "There are traces of blood on the door handle outside. Perhaps the killer injured himself while fleeing." The detective went out to the parking lot and examined the spot where, according to Anna, the pickup truck had been parked. There were visible stains of motor oil on the asphalt, some old, some fresh. Perhaps the truck had been leaking. At 2:30 a.m., the coroner arrived. A preliminary examination showed that both women had died from multiple blunt force trauma. Time of death was between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. Collins gathered all the available information. Tara Torres's wallet contained an address on Palm Ridge Drive in a suburb of Tampa. Rachel King's documents contained an apartment address in Westchase and a business card for Premium Motors car dealership. "Tomorrow we'll start with the husband," the detective told Officer Rogers. "Jim Torres, if he exists. In the meantime, we'll cordon off the entire area and find every surveillance camera within a 5-mile radius." By morning, the Sunset Inn Motel had turned into a crime scene with yellow tape, patrol cars, and journalists who had already begun to gather at the entrance. The story of a double murder at a roadside motel always attracted media attention. Collins understood that he had several leads: the GPS tracker, the pickup truck, the motive of jealousy. but the killer already had a head start of several hours. In a murder case, the first 48 hours are critical, and precious time had already been lost. The detective looked at room 15, where the forensic team was still working. 2 women had died here because of a love that someone couldn't accept. Now his job was to find that person and get justice. September 18th, 2025, 8:30 a.m., Polk County Police Station. Detective Collins sat at his desk, studying the Torres King case file. In front of him were photos from the crime scene, witness statements, and the preliminary report from the forensic team. The first thing he needed to do was find Tara Torres' husband. A search of the database revealed Lance Torres, 38, owner of Torres Construction, residing at 2847 Palm Ridge Drive. Driver's license issued for a 2019 Ford F-150 pickup truck. Bingo, the detective muttered. At 9:15 a.m., Collins and Officer Rogers arrived at the Torres residence. The neat brick house with a well-kept lawn looked like the epitome of the American middle-class dream. A black Ford F-150 pickup truck with noticeable oil stains under the engine was parked in the driveway. Collins examined the pickup without touching it. There were small dents on the front bumper and reddish stains resembling blood on the right rearview mirror. Lance Torres opened the door after the second ring. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red, his clothes were wrinkled, and he had several days' worth of stubble. There were fresh abrasions on the knuckles of his right hand. "Mr. Torres, Detective Collins, Polk County Police, can I talk to you?" Lance froze in the doorway. "About what?" "About your wife, Tara. May I come in?" The man hesitated, then stepped aside. Collins and Rogers entered the living room. The detective noticed an overturned lamp that someone had carelessly put back in place and a broken picture frame on the coffee table. "When was the last time you saw your wife, Mr. Torres?" "Yesterday morning. She left for work." Lance sat down on the edge of the sofa, avoiding the detective's gaze. "What happened? Where were you last night between 9 and 11? "At home, watching TV." Pause. "Why do you ask? Did something happen to Tara?" Collins studied the man's reaction. Lance looked nervous, but not surprised. His questions sounded mechanical, without real concern. "Mr. Torres, I have to tell you that your wife is dead. She was murdered last night." Lance was silent for a few seconds, then covered his face with his hands. "It can't be," he muttered. "Is there anyone who can confirm that you were at home?" "No, I was alone." Lance raised his head. "How did it happen? Where?" "At a motel on the outskirts of Lakeland. Another woman was with her, Rachel King. Did you know her?" Lance's face twitched at the mention of Rachel's name. "No, never heard of her." The lie was obvious. Collins took a plastic bag with a GPS tracker out of his pocket. "We found this in your wife's purse. Do you know what this is?" Lance looked at the device and turned pale. "No idea." "It's a GPS tracker. Someone was tracking Tara's movements. Who could have done that?" "I don't know. Maybe someone at work. Or that woman, Rachel." Collins stood up. "Mr. Torres, I have to ask you to come to the station to give a formal statement." "I'm not obligated to." "No, you're not. But it will help us find your wife's killer." At the station, Lance sat in the interrogation room, nervously drumming his fingers on the table. Collins entered with a thick folder and a tape recorder. "Tell me about your relationship with your wife. Was everything okay?" "Of course. We were married for 13 years. "No problems? No arguments?" Lance hesitated. "We argued sometimes, like all married couples." "What did you argue about?" "Work, money, the usual things." Collins opened the folder and took out a printout of the GPS tracker data. "This shows your wife's movements over the last 3 weeks. See these dots? She regularly visited the Sunset Inn Motel. Did you know about this?" Lance looked at the printout, and the detective could see the struggle going on in his head. "Mr. Torres, we know you installed the tracker. Your fingerprints are on the device. We know you knew about your wife's relationship with Rachel King. A witness saw your pickup truck at the motel last night." Lance was silent. "There's blood on your car. There are abrasions on your knuckles. You killed them, didn't you?" A long pause. Then Lance's shoulders slumped and he closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to kill Rachel," he said quietly. "I just wanted to talk to Tara." Collins turned on the tape recorder. "Tell me what happened." "I followed them to the motel. I waited outside, trying to work up the courage to go in. When I finally decided to go in, I saw them together, on the bed." Lance's voice trembled. 13 years of marriage, and she chose that woman. "And what did you do?" "I yelled at them. I told Tara that she was my wife and that she had to come home. But she refused. She said she didn't love me anymore, that she never really loved me." Lance paused, gathering his thoughts. "Rachel tried to protect her. She stood between us. I just pushed her away, but she fell and hit her head on the edge of the nightstand. She stopped moving immediately." "What about Tara?" "She was screaming, trying to help Rachel. I realized what I had done and panicked. I tried to get Tara to be quiet, but she wouldn't stop screaming. I don't remember exactly what happened next. When I came to, they were both dead." The room fell silent. Collins turned off the tape recorder. "Lance Torres, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Tara Torres and Rachel King." 3 months later, Lance Torres was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He showed remorse at the trial, but the victims' families did not forgive him. Jay Rodriguez took over the management of Torres Construction, but the company never recovered from the scandal. Most clients terminated their contracts, unwilling to be associated with the name of a murderer. Ana Garcia sold the Sunset Inn Motel and moved in with her daughter in Orlando. Room 15 remained empty until the day of the sale. No guest wanted to stay there. Detective Collins retired in January 2026. The Torres King case was the last murder he investigated. Sometimes he thought about how control and jealousy could turn an ordinary person into a murderer, and about 2 women who just wanted to be happy. The story of Tara and Rachel was a reminder of the price you have to pay for love in a world where not everyone is ready to accept it.